Thank you for joining me today. It's Brian Gubernick, and welcome to the No Days Off podcast, where we believe that every single day brings a new opportunity to get better. The world is constantly trying to make you normal. That's a direct quote from Jeff Bezos in his final shareholder letter as Amazon CEO. In today's episode, we're going to break down why that message is a wake-up call. Not just for big companies like Amazon, but for entrepreneurs like you, for those listening to the No Days Off podcast. Really anyone who's trying to build something meaningful. This isn't about Amazon today. It's about you. It's about how you should stay different in a world that kind of rewards conformity. Now, this is an interesting conversation because just a few episodes ago, episode 514, I talked about the uniqueness bias and how, as entrepreneurs, we sometimes believe that our challenges and our ideas and our businesses are one of a kind. But that belief sometimes can be holding us back. So we've got to kind of balance this desire and this need to be unique and different, but also not let it cloud our vision such that this uniqueness bias, this tendency to think our situation is more unique than it really is, how it leads to avoidable mistakes. It can lead to wasted time. Today, though, we're going to talk about the need to stay different in a world, again, that rewards conformity. Bezos stepped down in 2021. And this letter he wrote really mattered because it was what I would call a legacy letter. It was his final message as CEO. And he talked about what really made Amazon successful. And he warned what threatened that success. And what did he warn about? The pressure to be typical. He said in the letter, the world wants you to be typical. In 1,000 ways it pulls at you. Don't let it happen. That's what he's telling the shareholders of Amazon. I think about this quote a lot, especially when I see entrepreneurs trying to copy someone else's marketing, or if you're in the real estate space, when a real estate agent is really kind of blending into a sea of sameness. I think about how the world wants you to be typical and it pulls at you to be such. You can't let it happen. I think there's lots of lessons to draw from this particular letter. And I do want to encourage you to just Google Jeff Bezos final shareholder letter 2021 and read it for yourself. But there's a handful of lessons here that I want to run through. I think lesson number one is that distinctiveness takes energy. Jeff Bezos said that being different isn't easy. It takes a lot of energy. Everyone's told to be yourself, but few are actually willing to fight to stay themselves. And that's what he was talking about at Amazon. Amazon, knew it needed to be unique, but then few after Amazon had success were willing to fight to stay unique, stay themselves. In our own industry, like in the real estate space, if that's the space you're in, or your own industry, how many people start out with really big, really unique energy, but eventually they get worn down and they start to play it safe? See, that's what Bezos was warning against. Distinctiveness takes energy. In the real estate sales space, a solo agent builds a brand around authenticity, but then starts to mold into what everyone else is doing. See, I think Bezos is telling us if you want to win long term, you have to fight to stay weird, stay bold, stay you. So lesson number one, distinctiveness takes energy. Lesson number two, you got to create more than you consume. In the letter, he says, if you want to be successful in business, in life actually, you have to create more than you consume. What this means is if you're in sales or leadership or entrepreneurship, are you creating value or are you just extracting it? You've got to create more than you consume. So if you're in sales or leadership or entrepreneurship or whatever it may, are you creating more value or are you simply extracting it? Are you giving your team more leadership than you take in production? Are you giving your clients a remarkable experience or are you just processing a transaction? Give more than you consume. Create more than you consume. I think this is a gut check question. If you're just skimming value off the surface, your success is going to be short-lived. Lesson number three, the long game and bold bets. He talks about the long game and making bold bets. Bezos credits Amazon's success to a willingness to make bold, long-term bets. Now, we can contrast this with short-term thinking, like chasing likes or cutting corners or avoiding risk. I think there's so many stories out there, though, where you could read, or maybe you've had experience where you took a long-term bet, like simply starting a business or investing in people, and you see how that pays off. You got to be willing to make that bold long-term bet. The best companies, the best people, they're not obsessed with being right the next 90 days. They're obsessed with being relevant a decade from now. I think the final lesson, or I should say final warning, Bezos really emphasizes, and I mentioned this at the start, don't get pulled into typical. Bezos says, the world wants you to be typical, fight it. Don't build a copycat business. Don't lose your edge to appease critics. Don't confuse safe with smart. Typical isn't dangerous because it's wrong. It's dangerous because it's comfortable. Make sense? So here's my challenge for you today. Okay? Here's the question I want you to sit with. Are you building something distinctive, or are you slowly becoming typical without even realizing it? I'll ask you again. Are you building something distinctive, or are you slowly becoming typical without even realizing it? I think it's a heck of a question for us to contemplate. Now, if you recognize that maybe you are slowly becoming typical without even realizing it, at least until today, what are you going to do to create that distinct edge that you once had? That's all I have for you today. The No Days Off podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, every single day brings a new opportunity to get better. So let's get after it.